righty, we are back again, week number 6. How's it feel, Graham?
Yeah, great, man. Things are moving right along, and feels like last week has been a big week, or the last 7 days since we did this again. So yeah, lots happening.
It's very true. Yeah, I was showing my wife earlier. Bitcoin's up 36% for the month, and Amboss fired off a tweet talking about how much more efficient the Lightning Network is because capacity-wise, as far or dollar amount on the network is at an all-time high, even though channels are down a little bit. So it's fascinating how
Mhm.
optimization works. But we're going to dive in. We've got some fun stuff to talk about this week. It's been a spicy week, to say the least, and a lot going on in Bitcoin and Lightning. But I'll kick it off here, and we can dive into one of our first topics here. And this is
Mhm.
kind of a fun one for me because the ECB got community noted. This was pretty cool to
Yeah.
see because stuff like this, they fire off tweets often, and I've honestly got alerts set up now where every time they say something, I hop in the comments and make a little statement. But what are your thoughts on this, Graham? Like, is this kind of like the Streisand effect happening in real time, or what's been your take?
I don't know if I'm familiar with the Streisand effect. So I don't know about that, but I mean, I think for this, like, it's just really interesting. I think that we see there's a starting to be a divergence between like public opinion and like these people like the ECB and their narrative that they're trying to push forward with like what Bitcoin is, what it's used for, all of these things. And I think when you get community noted like as hard as they did, it's obvious that like there people are not just kind of buying the narrative at face value anymore. It previously was that people just kind of just take this stuff and kind of roll with it. But now we're starting to see a lot more, thankfully, education in the community, and then people are starting to just kind of like wake up into what is real and what's not real. I think that an offshoot of this is kind of like Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan, who he says all these things in the public and news outlets and all of these things that is very anti-Bitcoin. But then you see J.P. Morgan as the organization is doing things with Bitcoin, and they will increasingly do so, in my opinion, over time. So it's kind of like there's the difference between these people that kind of hate it because they're don't have the control over it like they have in other areas. But then we see people that are actually, there's people demanding it. There's the real world use cases. We see that in the ETF again with like record volumes across those. So I think overall, we're seeing this big divergence between people like the ECB and then public opinion.
Yeah, yeah, you're spot on. I don't know. Community notes have been a net good thing. It feels like broadly for X and the internet. So
They used
yeah,
to not be. They used to not be. They used to be like super nitpicky. I don't know what the word is, but they used to not be all that helpful. But now I find them to be actually helpful and fairly accurate for the most part. So that's an aside, but it's a good thing to see.
yeah, yeah, right on. Well, good deal. All right, Christine Lagarde, we appreciate you. Next on the menu, we got this hot topic: brains allowing Lightning payouts. This is pretty sweet because anyone who's on Bitcoin Twitter, I mean, you're very aware that there's a lot of at-home miners. There's very creative ways to mine now, and you can withdraw Sats from Brains. It's pretty sweet. I think I have 25,000 Sats in my Brains account that I used when I did one of the like the online like cloud mining softwares, and it's sitting there, and I was like, man, I'm never gonna get this. And then voila, Brains is
Yeah.
like, hey guys, we got a solution. And Voltage helped play a role in this. I'd love to hear from your perspective behind the scenes. You've been kind of heads down about it, but it's big news, and I'd love to hear kind of your thoughts on it and the excitement.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, I think from like just generally speaking on like pools kind of adopting Lightning, it's obviously I think very beneficial, especially from like your average user that wants to mine maybe with like a single S9 at home and then being able to get their rewards their block rewards out of the platform much quickly and easier because previously or pools that don't have Lightning, there's usually a minimum threshold that you have to hit before you can withdraw because Brains is going to like fork up the on-chain cost to send like 500 sats or something, and then you got to worry about dust limit, all these different things. So with Lightning, you're able to withdraw. There's basically no minimums and no fees inside of removing your funds from a pool into your own wallet. So it enables customers to withdraw more frequently. Again, not have the fees associated with withdrawing, and so it enables. I think it also enables more interesting use cases that I think that we'll start to see. I think there's kinds of the things like home heaters and stuff that that would mine Bitcoin, which has kind of been like, it's kind of been a fun thought for a while, but I think that we'll actually start to see some of that become a little bit more of a reality over time, which doing things like that makes no sense without Lightning inside of the pool, being able to do withdrawals via Lightning, because like you said, you would never be able to hit like the minimum amount to be able to withdraw from a pool. So overall, it's going to be very, very great to see pools start to integrate Lightning for a lot of reasons. A lot of reasons, both from their perspective as well as from the user's perspective. For Brain specifically, I mean, they're we help them kind of get this started. We're very excited to be working with them. I personally mine at home connected to Brain, so it's like personal for me to be able to kind of connect in and then withdraw via Lightning. And then it's also they're one of the first pools. If you follow them on Twitter or something, they get asked for Lightning constantly. So here they are, kind of being at the forefront of enabling Lightning into these pools. So it's really exciting to see. We're very excited to work with them. And I think it's gonna set a precedent where Lightning and mining are definitely have a lot in common, and like they can collaborate a lot. There's a lot of integrations that can happen there, and I think that this is just the start for a lot more things like this to happen.
Yeah, that's really cool. So I'm really curious. I don't know how much hash is out there in S9s that are connected to other pools, but it'll be curious over the next few years if there could be a new mining pool that spins up more decentralized miners that are not in like one condensed area, like in these huge buildings with tons of megawatts, and they're able to solve for blocks. So I would hope that
Mm-hmm.
a couple of new pools over the next few years spin up, and it gives people opportunity to attract hash. But yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. If we have an analyst, I would be interested in someone kind of breaking that down.
Yeah. I mean, I think also I think that was one of kind of the reasons why Ocean got started, is to be this sort of more decentralized pool and all of these things. They have Lightning on their roadmap, from what I understand. So it'll be interesting to see stuff like that kind of continue to develop out. So I think it'll be really exciting.
Yeah. On the whole mining note, we've got a Marathon Digital. They created Slipstream, which, to my knowledge, just at a high level, what I saw is if someone doing, quote unquote, putting arbitrary information on the chain, doing things outside of standard payments that, certain folks may not want to have happen, because they have a big enough pool, you can send it to them directly. And if they produce that block, they'll include it. Is that kind of the general gist at a basic level?
Yeah. So the way that normal Bitcoin transactions work is you create a transaction, you sign it with your private key, and you submit it to a Bitcoin Core node, which then like broadcasts it to the greater network, which is inside of the mempool. So the mempool is basically all the pending transactions that are waiting to be confirmed into a block. Everyone, people are relaying transactions all around to facilitate kind of getting those known, so then they can be confirmed. What the slipstream is basically you bypass the mempool entirely, and because they're the ones that are producing blocks, a miner or a pool can produce whatever blocks that they want. They don't have to take just the standard block template off of Bitcoin Core to include. They can create kind of any kind of block template that they would want. And so, for that, they have a service that they created to be able to submit a transaction directly to them, which they will include in blocks that they mine. I'm guessing for a fee. I haven't looked into their fee structure on it, but I'm guessing they're taking a fee on that. So the implications of that are that now people can, there's some people that have implemented like kind of block filtering inside of Bitcoin Core nodes, like or Bitcoin knots, and kind of these offshoots that are enabling more filtering of transactions, so they aren't going to relay to their mempool or others' mempools these maybe transactions that have ordinals in them or something like that. And so so this is a way of kind of bypassing that, where basically Marathon is saying, hey, send us a transaction, we'll put it into a block, you don't even have to worry about the mempool. So it gives the users the ability to do that essentially. The kind of the negative effect of this is that we're starting to the more that these services get created, the less the mempool is accurate in terms of what it does the next block look like, how fast will your transaction get confirmed, what is the going fee rates. All of these things become much less accurate because there's these kinds of side unknown. Black market is a little extreme of a term, but there's kind of these unknown parts of the network that are kind of submitting transactions that the mempool didn't see. So it kind of complicates things from that perspective, and that the mempool becomes a little bit less reliable if these were to kind of proliferate and become a substantial part of transactions that were being mined there. So interesting to see. It's also interesting from my perspective to have someone as large as like Marathon doing this. It's not kind of there's some of the smaller pools that have done similar things previously, but it is interesting to see this large of a pool kind of going in this direction.
Yeah, very interesting. Above a lot of things I'm thinking about, honestly, but it's pretty interesting to see how rapidly people are responding to just market forces in the industry now. Like, things move way faster than they did years ago, and that's honestly pretty exciting, just generally.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we're at a state where people are definitely interested in what are people looking for? What are the use cases, and how can we solve them? Because Bitcoin is getting much more usage than we did 5 years ago. And so previously it was a lot of building things that we think that people will want one day. Now we have enough users just in Bitcoin in general. These ETF, like all of the kind of general sum of people that are using Bitcoin today is much, much higher. So we have a much better understanding of what do people want and don't want.
Yeah, absolutely. So this kind of segues pretty nicely into our next topic. We talked about kind of lightning withdrawals on mining for smaller miners. We've talked about bigger miners who have influence and ability to create unique solutions for new things that the Bitcoin protocol enables, as far as like what can be done within a transaction. And next we have here the BIP 119 proposal for a soft fork. And I generally just read through this letter that John Carvalho wrote to Jeremy Rubin, and John has shared this on Peter McCormick's podcast, and I thought it was a good point, and I actually enjoyed listening to his podcast because he was just talking about the influence that core contributors have and how people lean on them just a bit too much. And he just raised the point of any changes to Bitcoin should be for specifically security, privacy, and another point. But I'd love to hear your take on this, as you're really, the technical wizard of the two of us.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. It's honestly kind of a little bit of a hard thing to come up with the right answer for. But there's people like, I think that this was talking with Jeremy Rubin about he's one of the big proponents of some of the new software proposals like APV, CTV, and so some of those that add basically more functionality into Bitcoin via softworks. And I think that the counter argument is that we can't just continually change Bitcoin. I think that the impetus here that John is trying to put forward is that we should be very pragmatic, very slow to change, and be when we do want to change, we need to have a very, very clear reason why. Which I think that there's merit to that. I think in his comments there specifically was around being able to, we can make changes when like enough like users demand it, or there's like a use case that really kind of solve that requires it, that is big enough to facilitate us going through the process of doing a soft fork. I kind of disagree with that, and that it's almost like his same points of not all users are going to know, hey, I need CTV to be able to do this thing. The average user isn't going to know deep down what is a soft fork that is required to do this thing that I want to do. I think generally speaking, users are like, I want to send instant payments without any counterparty risk, and like that's what they want. Okay, cool. It's kind of up to like the core developers and people like us to figure out how do we do that in a way that that kind of checks all of the boxes that they would want. So it's a little bit like, there's no user that's going to come to the Bitcoin core, make a PR if like a new BIP to, say, hey, I want this use case. Here's how it needs to get done, because they just don't have the technical knowledge to do it. So I think it's going to be interesting to see. I think that there's definitely a lot of enhancements that can be done, that should be done to Bitcoin. It's like, that's kind of a personal opinion, but I think overall, I think it's there. We definitely need to approach these things from the standpoint of the users. It's kind of like, I think that they're almost going about it of like, well, does the user know what they need at the protocol level versus not, and those kinds of things. So it's a complicated subject, but I think overall we should be willing to change if there's the right reasons, the right kind of testing, and all of those things behind it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And we were talking last week a little bit about just being able to have like good, calm, coherent arguments and to debate like how decisions need to be made. Like that's how things get better and evolve. And I know a lot of folks don't necessarily love John, but I've always kind of appreciated his candor and just his desire to like speak up. But different people are what make the world great. So kudos to these guys hashing it out in the open and moving this forward.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely agree. I think that John Carvalho is definitely a unique voice in the space, but yeah, I do agree that I think that his kind of candid takes, and he tells it the way that he thinks that it is. So I think that's always valuable, whether you disagree with it or not. I mean, I think that that's a good way to go about it.
Yes. Bullish on free speech, y'all. All right. Next, this is a pretty big deal. Like one thing I know we're constantly talking about internally are the demands and needs of enterprises to use Bitcoin and Lightning Network as a payment network. And it's important to have, these hurdles that organizations face. They have lawyers, they have accounting, all these things. They need to be met regardless of how individuals feel from like the early stages of Bitcoin. Amboss has released Reflex, which is a pretty cool tool. I haven't had a chance to dig in too much. You kind of brought this up as like a last minute topic, which I'm glad you did. But could you shed some light on this and what type of value this brings to enterprises?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think hopefully I can do the explanation justice, but basically Reflex is a way of doing a lot of kind of the standard checks and balances that a large organization would need. So on their website, OFAC checks, kind of continuously monitoring of payments to see if you what like sent payments to like a sanctioned country or something like that. Also looking at who you're connecting to, and are they in a geography that is not a geography that you want to interact with. So for the average kind of node runner, this is probably all like, BS that they don't want to deal with, which is fine. But as we look to try and onboard, large financial institutions, there's basically, they can't touch Lightning until they have these kinds of checks and balances. And so it's a necessary, I think it's a great product from Amboss. I think it's a necessary one for them to be able to, for those larger financial institutions to have the confidence in the Lightning Network and the ability to integrate it. So I think this is really exciting to see. I think it's definitely something that we're going to be integrating into Voltage, so we can offer it to our users as well. And so I think that this is the takeaway here is it's not for your average node runner. It's probably definitely more on the higher level side, but I think it's going to be really nice, and it's going to check a lot of boxes for these organizations that are looking into adding Lightning to their services.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember over the last couple of years at Bitcoin conferences, you get an opportunity to sit down and talk to just different business leaders that you may not engage with on Twitter. And a lot of them, when I'm like, what's maybe holding you guys up? They do specifically bring up, if we run a Lightning node and we somehow route payments or like have money flowing from sanctioned countries, we're just going to get sued and we're going to get in a lot of trouble. We're going to have legal problems, all this stuff. I'm not an operator thinking about these things, but to have heard that so very consistently, it's pretty cool that there's solutions out there that can help mitigate that risk, right? Like, because these things aren't going anywhere. If anything, the world will become more regulated, for better or for worse. So having enterprise tools for Bitcoin and Lightning is pretty incredible.
Yeah, definitely. I agree.
Well, speaking of enterprise tools, we've got some stuff happening later today. What do you want to maybe share with the audience who's here about some stuff we're working through today?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that we've hinted at it a little bit on Twitter and stuff, but we're doing a fairly large release today that should be out by fairly soon. That's going to enhance kind of the Voltage experience from a lot of different angles. So it's a very large release. We're really redoing kind of our web application, the website itself, into kind of combining Surge and Node. So it's all just kind of a single point of point of reference for any operators out there. We're adding in team support, so you can have a team invite users to help manage your nodes and things like that. That's been the biggest a very large request from a lot of users is having a lot of checks and balances and being able to invite users to manage your infrastructure as well. And then we're also doing, a fairly large like billing overhaul. So the way that we kind of charge for our products and services, the way that we're going to be, launching new things in the future. So that's going to be very, very helpful as people look to, figuring out what exactly do you need from Voltage? How do you pay for it? All those things. So it's much more clear than what has existed previously. And then it's just we're really teeing this up for it's a big release in itself. And we have a lot of things we're going to be adding on in the coming months to make it just a top notch experience. So we'll have later today blog posts, all of these things that really outline all of the specific details on how that's going to go. But overall, really big release that's going to really streamline the experience of Voltage and give you a lot more capabilities than what you have had previously.
This is wonderful. Yeah, it's exciting stuff. Well, guys, that wraps it up for today. Next week, we'll not be running a live stream. We are having a company meeting, and we're working through some stuff. But the week after, we'll be right back. So stay tuned for that being scheduled. And any topics you want to see covered, feel free to pass them along to us. And we appreciate those who tuned in. Graham, thank you again for your time.
All right. Thanks, Bobby. We'll talk to you guys later on, 2 weeks.
All right. Bye, y'all.